Episode 3, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae blood froze in the veins of Rome when word spread Hannibal had descended from the Alps alive. Not as a broken refugee of war, but as a predator stalking their fields. The Senate scrambled, generals were dispatched, and legions marched to meet him. Rome believed numbers and discipline would crush him. Hannibal believed their arrogance would be their undoing. The first clash came in December 218 BCE on the icy banks of the Trebia River. Rome, led by the consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus, had nearly twice Hannibal's men. Confident in their might, the Romans waded across the freezing waters at dawn, soaked and shivering, eager for a decisive strike. Hannibal had prepared the battlefield like a stage for a play only he knew the ending to. He unleashed his cavalry in a fierce charge, elephants trumpeting through the chaos, pinning Rome's soldiers. But the true trap lay hidden. 1,000 of his best men, concealed in tall grass behind Roman lines, struck at the perfect moment. The Romans, trapped between a frozen river and Hannibal's hammer, collapsed. Nearly 20,000 Romans lay dead or captured. Hannibal had painted Italy red, and this was only the beginning. 6 months later, he struck again. On the foggy shores of Lake Trasimene, Hannibal orchestrated what would become the largest ambush in ancient history. Rome's new commander, Flaminius, marched his men into a narrow valley between lake and hills. But the hills weren't empty. They were alive with Carthaginian soldiers lying in wait. At Hannibal's signal, thousands erupted from the mist, thundering down onto the Roman columns. Panic set in, horses bolted, soldiers drowned in the lake, others cut down where they stood. In just 4 hours, Flaminius's army of 30,000 was annihilated. The consul himself was slain. Rome was stunned. Hannibal had not just won battles, he had turned Italy into a graveyard. But his masterpiece was yet to come, Cannae, 216 BCE. It was here that Hannibal would craft one of the most studied battles in history, a symphony of destruction so perfect it is still taught in military academies today. The Romans, desperate to end Hannibal's rampage, assembled the largest army they had ever put in the field, nearly 80,000 men. They outnumbered Hannibal 2-1. Their strategy was simple: crush him with overwhelming force. Hannibal understood their plan before the first sword was drawn. He knew their strength was also their weakness. On the hot, dusty plain of Cannae, Hannibal arranged his men in a crescent shape. His weakest troops in the center, his best on the wings. As Rome's legions surged forward, they smashed into the Carthaginian middle, pushing it back. It seemed Hannibal's line was collapsing. But this was no collapse. It was a dance of death. Step by step, Hannibal's center gave ground, curving backward like a bow. At the same moment, his cavalry swept aside Rome's horsemen and circled back, striking the Roman rear. His wings, fresh and unbroken, swung inwards, closing the crescent into a noose. In hours, the largest army Rome had ever fielded was trapped, suffocating in a circle of steel. It was slaughter. Estimates say 50,000 to 70,000 Romans were killed in a single day. Entire consular armies vanished into dust. It was not a battle, it was a massacre. Hannibal stood victorious, not merely as a general, but as a legend. The Alps had been conquered, Trebia had been a lesson, Trasimene a warning, but Cannae was a thunderclap that shook the world. Even centuries later, Napoleon and Hitler would study it, trying to replicate its brilliance. But what Rome lost in bodies, they regained in spirit. The Senate refused to surrender. They would not negotiate. Instead, they hardened. Hannibal, though victorious, faced a bitter truth. Rome was a beast that would not die easily. Allies were reluctant to fully commit to Carthage, and reinforcements from home were slow. Hannibal held Italy in a grip of fear, yet the prize he sought, Rome itself, remained just out of reach. Still, after Cannae, Rome trembled, and Hannibal's shadow loomed larger than ever before. The general who had sworn to his father as a boy never to be a friend of Rome now seemed on the edge of fulfilling that promise. But storms were brewing, both in Rome and in Carthage, that would test Hannibal not on the battlefield but in politics, patience, and fate.